Hey everyone, Hoff here. Before we get started, we just want to send out a big thank you to our partner, Grind Coffee Co., for their support of the show. They're a convenient subscription service offering specialty grade, single source, 100% Arabica coffee, available in whole bean and drip grind. Check out grindcoffeeco.com. Thanks again to Grind Coffee Co. for supporting the show.
Everybody, I'm IZZY SWAN from Greenville, South Carolina, and I am here on the Builder Session, hanging out with a couple of cool cats and talking about some crazy fun topics.
Welcome to the Builder Sessions, a podcast where we chat with your favorite builders.
We get to know them, their stories, and hopefully inspire you to off the couch and build something cool. I'm Hoff.
And I'm Rosie.
And on this episode, we have IZZY SWAN. We chat about his extensive experience and knowledge in various disciplines that got him to where he is today, his passion for inventing and fabricating to solve problems, and despite how it may look on the surface, many processes are more connected than they may seem.
All this and more on this episode of the Builder Sessions. IZZY SWAN, welcome to the Builder Sessions.
Hey, thank you for having me.
This is exciting. Hoff's fangirling. I'm fangirling.
Yeah. For those that don't know what you do or a little bit about yourself, or for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am primarily a woodworker / inventor. I have a little channel over on YouTube, and then we play around on Instagram and TikTok every great once in a while as well. I still haven't figured out that platform. It's an interesting place.
It is.
That's primarily what we do, is make educational content and entertainment content, long form on YouTube. And we do some inventing. We've developed some products that are now available out there in the world for woodworkers and fabricators. I think that's probably about, I do some other stuff off the social media front, do a little bit of process engineering, process development in the manufacturing world. So a little bit of that, not as much as I used to. So that's kind of my my part-time real world gig, I guess. And then I guess that's really all about that's about it. So not super exciting.
I love how nonchalantly you just said that I'm just an inventor. I mean, it's awesome.
We have a lot of fun, and that's been an interesting world. YouTube's been a very interesting world for us. We've been on YouTube now, I guess, March 19th, 2013 was our inaugural launch video, the worst video that's ever been published on YouTube. But we've done a lot of learning over the last decade, and we've gotten a little bit better. And a few people have decided that they'd like to see more, so they follow us, and we've grown it into something of a nice channel and a nice business, and it's been good to us. Social media has been one of those things that's been really good for us, so it's been an exciting journey for sure.
That's awesome. So if we go back, how were you big into tinkering, building things when you were younger? Did you take shop classes? Can you kind of tell us about your backstory?
Yeah, my background is a little weird. I'm a fifth generation craftsman. I come from a long line of builders and craftsmen and tradesmen. And then I was really in my young age trying to get away from trades and woodworking, as it were, because that's what my folks did and my grandfather did and my Uncle Henry did. And,
oh, interesting.
How that is.
Yeah.
So I was always a tinkerer, to answer your question. And I went to school to become an architect, and realized I didn't want to be an architect. I actually wanted to build things. So I transitioned from that to project management. And when I got out of school and got my first project management job, I learned it was just a babysitting job. It really wasn't. I didn't really get to build anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not that's not something that was very fun for me. So that lasted a whopping 16 months in my project management job. And then I went into business for myself, and I have been ever since. Either building log homes or rustic furniture. We owned a rustic furniture manufacturing facility for a long time, up until 2008. Everybody knows what happened in 2008.
Yeah.
and there was some life transitions at the time, where my ex had moved quite a ways away from where we were based out of. And it just was a great opportunity to kind of transition. And we made a lot of good relationships in that industry. So I was able to kind of sell my designs, sell a lot of equipment, and I really didn't have to work. So I moved from Michigan to Charleston in 2010, 2009, late 2009. I've been in I've been in South Carolina ever since, with the exception of a couple of jobs that were up north. So yeah, I've been here doing that thing. I found YouTube. A friend of mine suggested it because I was pretty much bored. I'd go fishing every day when I wasn't playing with the kids. You can get tired of fishing. If you'd have told me that, pre 2013, I'd have been like, nope.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
possible.
Are you
But
kidding me? Yeah.
yeah, every day for 2 years, literally, even on Christmas. I was going for a record, and and you could fish all year round down in South Carolina. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
doable.
Mhm.
Not that you can't in Michigan, except for depending on how thin the ice you want to brave.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you found YouTube, and a friend of mine suggested it just as a way to meet other woodworkers. Because at that time I was living in Charleston, and there was no associations or groups or really anything. So we started making goofy videos on YouTube, just one-offs, like record from start to finish on my cell phone and then post it. And very shortly, people started to pay attention because I was doing things that weren't typical on YouTube. So that grew pretty rapidly for us into a small business. So
What were the things that you weren't doing that were typical? What were the things you were doing that weren't typical on YouTube?
well, we made a bowling ball on a table saw.
Wait, what?
That got some attention. I made a bowling pin with a circular saw that got some attention.
Oh, cool.
I showed people how to make round objects with all kinds of devices, circular saws, using screwdrivers and crazy little mechanical setups, and it's just stuff like that. And then I have a unique personality, so that worked really well. That played really well into the social media world, because I'm kind of just a nut job, class clown, goofball guy. Um, and so that just kind of stuff like that. And then as the channel evolved and I got more into like learning about video editing and we did some more complex projects where I've designed basically a 10.5 foot tall, 15 foot long Tyrannosaurus Rex that you can ride around. It's powered by an 18-volt drill, things like that. Folding tables. That seems, for some reason, for a while there, that whole folding furniture phase was really good to us, where, one of my most viral videos was literally a minute long video of a table I designed that folds up into about the size of a beer cooler, and then it unfolds into like the size of a small picnic table.
Mm.
That got a lot of attention. So things like that weren't atypical of content, where most people were just like building a traditional jig or furniture. But there was a lot of that, and a lot of good content around there. But those guys all had really good editing skills, and I think a lot of them had experience talking to cameras, where I was learning all of that. So I had to rely heavily on my technical abilities to get people's attention, because my editing skills were crap for many years on social media. So I relied really heavily on what on the technical aspect of what I could do to gain followers and notoriety and interest. That and a little bit of goofball personality thrown together seemed to work pretty well. That formula worked. And then over the last 5 years, everybody's seen it. Everybody's getting so much better at video and editing and all the stuff. I mean, it just, like, a lot of companies were getting involved, and you really had to produce decent content. At least I felt like it, to get attention. So I begrudgingly started teaching myself better editing and sound and lighting and all the stuff. So that's, spent the last little more than half decade learning all of that. And we've gotten to a point where we can kind of hold our own. We're nowhere near as good as a lot of folks are, but we're good enough, so, and that works for us. And still trying to do just the things that people aren't thinking of, inventing products around the industry and doing it in ways that are unique and different from what other people have seen, other approaches. So that's been a real originality and kind of thought-provoking ideas around content has kind of been our home, so to speak. You know,
How how does the like where did you get your creativity side? Because you was going through your Instagram over the holidays and stuff, and just I'm always mesmerized at the different products you create, and some of them are out there, they're very user friendly. Where did you have you always been creative and tried to think outside of the box, like even when you were younger, or
I
is it?
think I think partially. I mean, I think I have that. Some people have like somebody a really good artist, like they pick up a pen and shortly they're drawing really great pictures. Where a lot of us would struggle with that, you know. I mean, not that they didn't have to learn it; it's just that they're naturally inclined to that. So it's more comfortable. Some people are great at English, some are great at math.
Yeah.
You know, very few do people are both good at at both of those.
Yeah.
You know, some people understand physics better, other people understand geometry better. You know, that's just the way the world is. Um, I'm inclined to things that are mechanical. I think very, that sounds corny to say it, but I think very three-dimensional the way I process information, and I'm very visual. Like if you say something, my brain automatically just visualizes it. And you know, it's not like a just a thought, it's a visual expression for me.
Oh, interesting.
So I've always had that, which helped. And then in the rustic furniture world, and this is really where I give most of my credit to, the rustic furniture world was, we didn't do typical rustic furniture. We did something that's called Adirondack style, like birch and twig mosaic, some fairly complex things. We didn't work with straight timber or straight poles. Everything was shaped differently all the time. So I had to learn, and to this day, I think we're the only production company that ever existed in that particular furniture genre. Most people are just, you know, small shops, one-off shops. And that's one of the reasons why the stuff is so expensive. So I learned to build equipment that lended itself to all the different geometries and shapes and sizes of things, so we could make it make sense to turn it into I call it production, but quasi production furniture. And you know, that was really, I think, where I made all the mistakes there, and I learned a lot through that process. And this isn't something that just happened. I mean, we're talking a span of 15 years of making mistakes and learning and what works, what doesn't work, starting to understand material sciences and, you know, relay switches, motors, you know, pre-digital, you know, pre-popular digital stuff. And so that's where I got my basic knowledge of mechanical structure and working, you know, how things work. And then I'm fascinated by engineering, by mechanics, by things, and oh God, I love to learn. Like I love new information. I devour it. So, and I'm pretty good at understanding the connection between things, like understanding chemistry, how that connects to real world issues, real world things, understanding engineering and how engineering works with within particular genres like woodworking or agriculture or, you know, things like that. So then that's, you know, those things they don't just happen. That's a, you know, a process. And a friend of mine once said that you know, there's a saying, and I don't remember it verbatim, but if you do something for, you know, if you do one thing for 40 hours a week for, you know, 3 or 4 years, it makes you're in the top, you know, 10% of people in the world that do that thing. You know, if you do it for 10, you're in the top 2%. If you do it for more than that, you're in the like top 1.1 or, you know, 0.001%. And my whole life has been about understanding the connections between things and solving problems. So that's where I think the design ability comes from. And then just having a pretty serious um, pool of information to pull from to make things work the way I want them to also really helps. So I can look at something and say, okay, I have this object and I need it to move this way, and this way, and understand the mechanics behind how I can make that happen. So I guess that's the best explanation I can offer.
That's so
It's almost
cool.
like backwards thinking. I for different makers
Like
and
begin
builders.
with the end in mind kind of
Yeah,
thing?
like I'll make something. I'll see something and try and make it. You've got almost an upper hand of having that, I guess, skill set and knowledge of the engineering and mechanics of it. So right there, your brain, like you're saying, you're almost and you're being able to visualize stuff. You're going from how it works to the design part, and you've already got that, strength in being able to visualize or draw, write down how it's going to move, which probably helps your products come along a little bit further throughout the prototyping and the design phase.
It definitely helps. And, I know pretty much from the onset, I know what's going to work and I have a good idea. I mean, I'm not saying I design things and they're perfect the first time. It happens once in a while, but not often. I have a pretty good idea about what's going to happen next just because I know what I'm putting into it. Obviously there's often tweaks and adjustments and things that need to happen, but, yeah, that's kind of, so there's, I mean, I hesitate to say there's really nothing special about that. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole myself. I realize that I put a lot of energy and hard work and time and, into it. So yeah, in that aspect, it's special, but it's not something that somebody else can't achieve.
Yeah. Where do you think your
And
love
there's
of...
a lot of guys out there that can, that are just not on social media. So
Yeah, no.
I get to work with them. I get to work with them day in and day out. And there's some really phenomenal people out there.
Where do you think your love of learning came from? Or your desire, your passion for learning?
I don't like not knowing things. I don't want to be in a conversation and not at least have some information about it so I understand it enough that I can have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And the people that I tend to surround myself with are all smarter than I am. So
is that by design? That's by design, right? Like
most of the times, yeah. The engine, I get to work with just some of the best engineering teams in their fields in certain industries. I'm very fortunate that way, but I walk into a room and I'm really the smallest person in the room 90% of the time. So I'm always fighting to keep up. That's kind of where the information comes from, where I like to learn as much as possible so I can at least be part of the conversation and have some inkling of understanding of what's actually happening around me. So
almost kind of like hold your own in a sense.
Yeah. At least understand the conversation. And if you hang around with those people long enough, you start learning more and learning more and learning more and learning more. And then it becomes almost second nature after a short period of time of just absorbing and consuming the information. So like right now we're building, I had an opportunity. I presented a concept to an investment group via another company I will do some work with to build a factory from the ground up, like literally blank slate. Izzy, this is, you get a shot at this, give us your best idea. And I didn't know a whole lot about the input stream until I actually sat down and started learning about it, which took, 2 or 3 weeks to get a really good grasp, not really good base knowledge for that. Then I designed a system and put a presentation together and, and this is a project we'll be on now for the next 1.5 to 2 years because they absolutely love the idea and the concept. So this is my first opportunity to actually build a scalable, deployable system from the ground up. Like I get say in every single thing that happens with this factory.
Wow.
And this is my first opportunity to do something like this. And we're all very excited. Well, I'm very excited around here. Maggie's tolerating me. So.
That's going to be exciting to be able to be at the forefront of that, and everything goes through you, right? That's probably a lot of years of work and time invested to get to where you're at, to now be able to kind of see the fruits of your labor, I guess.
Yeah. And this is a 24-month project. So it's, it's a fun project, and it's just, and it's leading down a lot of other paths that we're finding very interesting. It introduced us to a world in the world of, first it's green technology, which I'm absolutely 100% on board with. Anything that we can do that makes living on our planet better. And then and then it's introduced me to a world of investors and other things that we just it's a ballpark that I've never played in before. So the next 2 years of my life are literally going to be just like going back to college, just constantly learning, constantly trying to understand and developing these systems at the same time. So it's really exciting. It's a really exciting time over here.
Sounds like it. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm wondering if we take a step back for a second. What was the first product or tool that you invented?
The first proprietary system I designed was a type of bandsaw following system to make chair seats, to make curved chair parts
Mm.
at a production line. And this was, oh boy, I guess it was 1997, 1997 when I did that. 1996, that was patented. It wouldn't be anything anybody'd ever see unless you were into mass quantity production of chairs. So that was my first big product. And most of the stuff I did up until YouTube was all with a couple of minor things, was all more factory level proprietary production equipment. Like we had a problem, we needed a piece of equipment that did a multiple of tasks at a single time instead of trying to have one piece of a part of furniture going down a product line doing one task at a time. I designed equipment to accomplish 3 to 5 different operations at a single time. So most of that stuff was like things like that.
So the reason why I asked is, if you're the first product that you're the first product that you're thinking of designing, and obviously you're focusing on meeting a need, which you've touched on before, and solving problems. Was there a struggle for you as far as like a confidence piece? Or was there what do they call that? Imposter syndrome when you were developing this? Did you ever think like, who's gonna want to use this or see this or care about what I have to say about that? Or were you always like, okay, this is gonna fix things. This is gonna make a lot of people, their production systems a lot more efficient, and everyone needs to hear this. Like, where were you in that, I guess,
I think
spectrum?
right out in the beginning of it, probably. I'll tell you guys a quick story. One of my very short jobs when I was very young was working for a rustic furniture manufacturing. They did mostly barnwood furniture,
Mm-hmm.
and I got fired. That's the only job I've ever been fired from. I went in there and I was looking at their operations and what they were doing, and I'm like, this is so inefficient. I mean, you could be doing this so much better. And they got tired of me telling them how they could be doing things better. So my job lasted about 3 weeks there. 10
Oh.
years later, they hired me as a consultant, and I came in and I saved them 30% on a $6 million furniture line. That is my first consulting gig. That was the first consulting gig I had. So this is the same company that fired me 10 years earlier.
Oh
After
man.
that, I kind of knew that I mean, I had a special ability to kind of see processes and where the gaps were and how to fix those processes. And I think after that, in that world, I don't have imposter syndrome anymore. I mean, I know I'm capable of doing things, and I know that because of my cross disciplines, I see things that other people don't see. Um, Now in the social media world, like when we're giving presentations or talking and stuff like that, I still get that imposter syndrome from time to time. Like I think last 2 workbench cons ago, I was giving a talk on creativity, and I'm like, I don't really belong up here, you know. So, and creativity is such a hard topic to talk about, you
Yeah.
know. It's like, how do you train somebody, or how do you have a 45-minute conversation with somebody and give them enough information to know that there's exercises and ways and things that you can do to to be more, not necessarily become more creative. I think we're all, I've never met a 5-year-old that wasn't creative as hell,
Yeah.
ever. And I think school beats that out of us, and the world beats that out of us. And some people tend to hang on to it really, really well, where other people kind of just go the way of the world, I'd call it. Maybe that's a bad way of saying it, that tend to kind of lose sight of that. Um, so it's just rekindling what people once already had. So, and I think that's a challenge. So yes, there are times where I feel imposter syndrome, especially in those type of circumstances. Now, if I was talking to a factory about how they can improve their processes and their workflows and understanding movement, and no, there's zero problems there.
Yeah.
It's when typically I get in some kind of abstract thing where I have to talk about creativity, or if I did a class on CNC machining, or thermoforming or something like that, I'd be solid, right?
Yeah.
No problems. But when you're asked to speak on abstract, that's always been a tough one for me. And probably to my detriment, I have a tendency to say things like I'm not very smart, and I'm not. That's just it. Everybody says you're smart, you do this. And I said, no, I'm good at a couple things, but I'm not I'm getting too much credit. And that's not, that's really not a thing. So, um, and I think I need to knock that off because I say that sometimes in circumstances where I shouldn't, but, it's my go-to.
We all have those. Okay?
What's your take on, like, it sound like you've had a ton of experience on the job, schooling versus on the job experience. What's your take on that?
I'm always hesitant to give advice on this, because if it were up to me, I'd have never gone to college.
Yep.
It was the worst thing I ever did.
Yeah.
The one advantage I got from school was confidence that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone to school.
Mm-hmm.
There was a measure of confidence that came from some of the education. Now, I never finished college. I'm not degreed.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time there where I had an opportunity to get hired away into a Pinnacle Construction Group, which at the time was an up and coming commercial construction group, building largely kidney dialysis centers and medical facilities. And they offered me more than I would have been making with a degree. And I still had a year and a half or 2 years to go. And that wasn't something I was gonna, I was like, heck yeah. Like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But honestly, I think college is good for confidence and some roundabout information, but it's a painfully slow way to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean painfully slow. My favorite classes in college were the open entry, open exit classes. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but back then you could study it. You could complete your course at your own pace. Like for instance, one of my first open entry, open exit classes was how to, computer science, formatting floppy disk, and basic understanding of formatting a floppy disk, right, guys?
3.5 or the big guy.
And that was like, I did the whole course in a weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, it was done. I sat down, I did all my course curriculum, I did all the studying, I did everything, and I did it in a weekend. And I'm like, all right, bring it on. This is great. But unfortunately, a lot of those classes were, let's sit here for 3 hours and use, listen to a lecturer that sounds somebody like Ferris Bueller's Day Off teacher.
Yeah.
You remember him?
Yeah.
It's impossible. I don't care who you are. And if you've had 3 Red Bulls, you cannot stay awake for their course. It's not possible, and I think that's a giant waste of time. There's very fast ways of learning the information that you need. Now, that said, if you're a doctor, I'm not going to come to you unless you have a degree.
Right? Yeah.
So, maybe that's, I don't want anybody giving me back surgery that doesn't have a degree and 20 years of experience. I'm sorry. So.
It seems like more the hands-on, the trades, the engineering, maybe not architect. It seems like there's the learning process can be expedited when you're on the job, introduced to many different scenarios. Sometimes schooling doesn't always, they've got their curriculum, and not to say that schooling isn't important, but lots of times you learn specifically in what area you're in and the different variables that come up from that sometimes, whoever's teaching the curriculum or the professor or whatever, or the trades teacher, whatever it may be, they might not be in that scenario or even know the variables. So it's hard to, what am I trying to say here? I guess the value from on the job experience, I find second to none on a lot of things. Obviously you need a baseline knowledge, but that on the job can be very beneficial depending on what sector. If you're in really specialized industry, probably on the job is very valid too.
Yeah, I agree. I think, some of the courses like on schooling on marketing and social media management and even some of the business management, other things, the degrees that are required for those they're stupid. I mean, social media has look at some of the biggest content creators just in our space, nothing that they did, if they have a degree, help them with becoming a large social media, content creator. They had a unique perspective. They knew how to video edit. They did some sharing and it worked for them. So, having some marketing understanding helps a lot, but there's a basic set of rules that you can follow. And if your content has any interest at all, it's going to get followed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And great. In all fairness, it's much harder today than it was 10 years ago to build a significant channel. there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but it's definitely possible. People are doing it every day, all day long.
And
Hmm.
exposed
So
to
yeah,
a lot of
you
different
know,
technology too that's out
Yeah.
there that back then, like you said, filming on your phone or something. Now you've got these, for even say the GoPro, for instance, a 4K little camera that you can have on a stand mount on your workbench, a helmet cam. Like there's the advancements in technology is
yeah,
through the roof.
yeah. And I was filming on a Galaxy Note 9 back then,
Oh,
which
nice.
was the most advanced Android phone at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But now we just got the Ultra 23s, and I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like, if you look back at the Note 9, it would be one of those little plastic toys you buy for kids
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And the Galaxy 23, I can record an 8K on that thing, so I could
Wow.
easily make videos on my phone now. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it records an 8K. The kind of system, the kind of computer system you'd have to reasonably edit 8K is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you just don't do it.
And we have
But
it on our phones. Oh
so yeah,
man.
it's the technology's come quite a ways, and so is the editing. I mean, there's a lot more editors that are available now than there were back then. They're a lot more user friendly. There a lot of those companies that want to be really competitive are designing their systems to be more and more understandable. So there's less of a learning curve. You don't need a college degree to learn how to use Wondershare, or even
Yeah.
DaVinci Resolve is getting easier and easier to use.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. That's what I've been dabbling with right now is DaVinci Resolve. I started with Wondershare.
yeah.
I didn't quite want it. I didn't want to settle for Windows Movie Maker, so I bought Wondershare, and then
Is Movie Maker still a thing? Because that's what I used for like the first 3 or 4 years.
yeah, I
After
think
I
it
learned
is.
editing, I used the old version of Windows Movie Maker.
But the
Yeah.
thing even the like all the new open source stuff that's coming out now, and the gatekeepers are starting to kind of dissolve away into the abyss,
Yep.
and it's
AI is
really cool.
over the next 5 years, you're gonna see video, the level of video go from what it is now to just ridiculous with AI, with the advent of AI. And now we're seeing some of the AI video formats starting to just kind of peak out a little bit. It's going to be crazy. So
So when you introduced yourself at the top of the show, you called yourself a woodworker. But I see a 3D printer behind you. I see a
oh yeah,
torch. I see.
CNCs, lasers, 3D
Would you
printers,
so
you name it,
do you
thermoforming, all
buy
kinds of stuff.
into the maker label, or like where are you at with that whole thing?
Oh, dang it.
How long?
I'm gonna throw myself right under the double decker bus. No, not really. I mean, so we call it the maker movement,
Yeah.
and that's fairly new, that whole maker movement. But if you look at our history, and I mean the history of not just the US, but our human history, we've always been makers.
Mhm.
We've always been innovators, always been creators, always been not quite satisfied. Always looking to how I make this better. How can I make my life better? And how can I make my family's life better? And how can I make my community's life better? We've always done that. I mean, that's always been a thing. We've always tried building things. We've always created things to make more comfort. So maker isn't new. Social media is new. But the maker movement has been happening for 1,000 years. It's not new. So I don't know. I mean, maker's a really easy way to kind of just say a thing,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
just it's a descriptive thing, but it leaves so much out. Like a good chef could be a maker.
Mhm.
My grandmother who knits phenomenal, or my grandmother could knit phenomenally. I mean, like professional level, crazy cool stuff. She'd be a maker.
Mhm.
Someone who makes dolls and does a great, that's a maker. I think even people who don't think that they're creative but still do things to make their houses better and paint and you know try different decorations with furniture and stuff like that in the under the descriptive of the word, that's still inclusive.
Yeah.
So I like it in that way, that it can describe a lot of people. But as far as, I also think in a way it pigeonholes a lot of what we do. Because I mean, if I had to give a word to what I am, I'm a fabricator. I'm not a woodworker necessarily. I'm not I'm not a design. I mean, not that I don't do a lot of designing, but that's not the keystone. The keystone is the fact that I fabricate things and they become physical reality. And I don't, not just in wood, I mean, plastics and, wood, plastic, stone, cements, metal, anything that needs to be done, I'm willing to do it. So at the end of the time, I'm more of so if I had to say that, I'd say, oh yeah, fabricator, you know. But yeah, that's a good question, and it sucks every time people ask it because I don't have a good answer for it. I kind of always, I was kind of fishtail with the answer for that one. I just don't know what that. I need a good answer for that question in the future.
Well, I like asking it because right now it's a hot word, right? With the show, that Making Fun show on Netflix, while we were sitting here talking, I'm like, why didn't they ask this guy? Why didn't they ask Izzy to be on that show with those other guys? That would have been cool. But it's trendy, maker, maker, maker. But like you said, humanity is composed of makers. It's like out of
Oh yeah,
necessity.
we were makers back when we were slinging clubs and making our underwear out of
Yeah,
bear hides.
the wheel.
That's just
There
yeah.
it is.
So to say maker movement is, it's a little nonplus. It's like,
Yeah.
we've been doing this forever. It's not new. It's a lot more publicized now. We have access to so much more information than we did even when I was a young man. If I had access to information right now when I was in my teens, I'd have been dangerous,
Hmm.
just because
Yeah.
I mean, I carry the world around in my pocket. If I need information about math, equations, formulas, anything, I can pick up my phone and ask the question, and within usually two or three websites, I can find the answer. So um, yeah, it's scary, what you can do with the power that's at our fingertips these days. But
So I got a question here for you. You CNC machining, laser engravers, 3D printing. How does Izzy face when a new piece of technology or machine equipment tool comes out? How do you go about learning how to use that to its best potential use?
well, yeah, make it make sense for everybody. I break everything into pieces. So I don't look at the whole of things anymore like I used to when I was young. I looked at a whole of a car and looked at the engine and said, I can't understand that. That's too much for me to understand. But when I break it down to how does it make a spark, and I understand that, that's one piece of information, and that's easy piece of information to learn. I mean, I could teach anybody how a car makes a spark in a 5 minute conversation. And then I learn, how does that spark create a combustion that creates movement? And I can explain how there's a little explosion, inside of a cylinder, and the cylinder pushes and it moves on a rod that, creates, rotary movement. And that's easy to explain. That doesn't take a lot. That's easy to tell you, right?
Hmm.
So, well, what happens after that? How does that power get to the wheels? And then you go, well, there's a drivetrain, and then you explain the 5 or 6 parts of the drivetrain and how they translate or they transmit that energy down the transmission. That's easy to understand too, you know. And so when you break things into small chunks, instead of trying to go like, first time anybody jumps into a 3D modeling program to understand 3D modeling, they instantly screw up by instead of focusing on one or two or three things up in the right hand corner and what they do, they start clicking on everything and start, try to do all the stuff. And that's where they screw up. If they stop, and it doesn't take long, this is the thing. I taught myself SketchUp in a weekend. I mean, functionally very capable of designing anything in 3D modeling inside of SketchUp in a weekend
Hmm.
because I didn't do the thing that everybody does. I take one aspect of it and I learn how it works. I learned how the push pull works. I learned how to make a square. I learned how to save products, how to take it in and out of 3D modeling space. I understand that there's lines, there's points, and there's surfaces, and that's all there is. There's nothing else in 3D modeling that once you understand lines, points, and surfaces, you're halfway there to learning 3D modeling. And at that point, it just becomes a memorization exercise is where things are. How do I get this this shape to extrude? How do I put a hole in the shape? How do I put a radius on the shape? It's so easy. I can teach anybody to 3D model in an afternoon if they stop and get out of their own damn heads.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is where everybody screws up. This is where social media is not helping
Yeah.
our country, our people, and the world by making everything in your face and fast. You know, it's this. I mean, you guys, nobody here hasn't doom scrolled. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah.
Seriously.
um, just getting people to get out of their own damn way and quit, effing up their heads and understand that in the most complex 3D model, each one of those parts is just a single part. And I can show you how to make a single part in 5 minutes, and you'll understand it and be able to duplicate it. So if you can stop them from, like looking at the whole engine and just looking how the spark is made first, and then once they understand that, move on to how it moves the cylinder. And then once they understand that, move on to how it transmits power. That's the fastest possible way anybody can learn, is to take something complex, break it down into small bits. And then once you've done that a few times, you start understanding, even though you haven't jumped into something before, you understand where start is and where you have a good idea where finish is. So if you've never done anything, you don't have instruction, and you jump into something, that's really the biggest issue, is you don't know where start is and you don't know where finish is.
Mhm.
So that's where education comes in. That's where people that have experience come in. They need to show you where start is, and they can help you get to finish, but they do that by breaking it up into small bits of information that are easily digestible. And if it's presented properly, they stick, and that's the other side of it. In typical education, when you present ideas, it's usually done in some very droll way, that's not exciting. And I'm not picking on you guys.
No,
Yeah.
it's true
I
though.
know you're
It's
both
true.
teachers,
True.
so
Well,
but
we're
if you can
shop
take that
teachers. We
little
don't do
bit of
that.
information and make that little tiny bit of information interesting enough that the vast majority of the people who are interested are going to grab that information, and it's going to stick somewhere in their, somewhere in their postsynaptic. It's
Yeah.
going to stay there. Um, you've done it. You've gotten to the point where now you're teaching people how to do that. So as educators, you know that you have to teach a start point and a finish point, and that information in between is valuable. But sometimes that information can feel like a lot to somebody who, especially kids,
Mm-hmm.
who may not be interested and may be distracted by their cell phones, their girlfriends, the booger that's floating around in their nose, whether their socks are on right and they're bugging them in their shoes. You have a big challenge, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make that information interesting enough that it stops them from being distracted by all those other things, and just get them for a second to digest it? That's really where the power comes in, is, having a way to show something to a group of people or a person that they relate to and understand and can digest. So that's how I happen to do everything literally everything I do is broken down into small bits, and I present it to myself in a way that I know I can digest it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I love that.
Because you've got CNC software, like on top of the softwares, you've got the physical machines as well as the inventing. Like you've just got so much going on to be able to, and I think a lot of people get stuck on that big picture. We were talking about that with a guest earlier this morning too. They get stuck on that big picture. So if you can do kind of like a task list and break things down into smaller, more manageable chunks, people are going to understand that. Even with like the engine you're talking about, I never even thought of that. Like I'm not very mechanically inclined, but to go from spark to, breaking it up like that, I'm starting to understand that more than just, how does a vehicle run? I don't know. You push up,
Yeah.
right? There's so many different
I
components.
take it to my dealership and I hand them this money. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going, fix my multi-quart sequential fuel injection system. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And the multi-quart sequential fuel injection system on a vehicle is relatively simple if you break it down into its components.
Yeah. It's
You
all
know?
the,
And
a
there's not
million
that many
systems.
components to it, just
Yeah.
so you guys know. But if you break those things down and you learn to present information to yourself in a digestible way, a way that it's going to stick in your brain, it makes learning enjoyable. I mean, it becomes
Mhm.
something that you enjoy and can digest rapidly. And I think, and then what's really unique, especially across disciplines, is there's a relationship between things that you wouldn't think that there's a relationship between, like chemistry and mechanical engineering. There's a really healthy relationship between those two things. And when you start understanding, at least to a working knowledge of both sides, you can start understanding the relationships between things that, and the relationships between CNC and 3D modeling and laser and, even thermoforming, and molding processes. Cross, there's a lot of cross pollination, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
So once you have a good understanding of one of them, it makes the next one easier and the next one easier and the next one easier and the next one easier, until you get to a point where it's almost second nature how these things work. It's like tying your shoes.
Yeah.
At some point in your life, and this is a great analogy that my friend Mike uses from time to time. At one point in your life, you didn't know how to tie your shoes. All of us, we were all at one point. Does anybody think about tying their shoes now?
Nope.
No. It's the same, because you do it every day, right? You do it at least once every day, sometimes more than once. It's an easy analogy to kind of translate over to education. Once you do something a bit and you start doing it so many levels deep, it becomes a lot like tying your shoes. It's just natural to think of things in a certain way.
I can relate to that as far as I had a 3D printer before we got the plasma CNC table at our school, and it's all XYZ. That's it, right? And I remember being so overwhelmed at this looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh. But so overwhelmed at this Ender 3 Pro, and it's
I've got two of those in the other room.
Yeah. and
or it might be the 5. I don't know. It's one of them.
And just like, because I went to this professional development session,
the PD class together.
PD, yeah,
way over my head. I couldn't.
And it comes in the box, and they teach you how to put it together and do like a simple, quick print. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna screw this up. Da, 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 da. And then now I have the same thing in a plasma table, and the knowledge that I got from learning how to use this 3D printer, it's all XYZ, it's all G code, and going from model to, and then basically you have to slice it in its particular way, so that it's all like you said, it's all connected.
Yeah, and some people that are listening are going to understand what you said. Some are going to have no idea what you're talking about.
I just lost everybody.
And no, it's fine. X is a motion. X is a movement one direction. Y is moving another direction, and Z is an up and down movement. So you put those 3 movements together, those 3 accesses, you create a box, and your machine works within that box. So it's just this box in air that the machine works inside of. And then G code is how you tell that the head of that machine or the tool of that machine where to go inside that box and what to do. That's all it is. It's crazy, stupid simple. If you break it down, it really is. And that's where it's a little bit frustrating when you look at somebody who's like, I can never learn CNC, or I can never. I'm like, yeah, you could, buddy. If you had any idea how dumb easy this is, if you just stop and get out of your head for a second and look at each component separately and what each component means, understand it before you move on to the next thing, and you're going to know this in no time at all.
And to have that,
and you won't.
Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, he mentioned something earlier that everybody experiences, and that's the unknown paradox. Like, I don't know. I'm putting this thing together. I've never seen one before. I've never used it before. I don't know how this is supposed to go. And even though he's getting instructions, there's still the fear, because I don't know, I'm going to screw up.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a mistake. And you know what? You could have. It's possible, but
it didn't matter.
You're not going to, the world will not explode.
Yeah, exactly.
You will be able to fix anything that you didn't mess up on, because you have somebody there showing you, or you have instructions. So there's nothing there to worry about. It's like, the Confucius saying, if there's a problem and I can fix it, there's no problem.
Yeah.
If there's a problem and I can't fix it, there's still no problem.
Yeah.
So there's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly.
Just getting people out of their own heads, that's a skill set that, is highly valuable, and helping them understand a path that isn't scary or isn't complex or doesn't make them feel like they're intellectually inadequate, is another very important thing to know and understand. And I think people would be a lot less intimidated about learning new technology like CNCs or 3D printers or lasers, whatever that is, especially if they saw the actual practice of something being used.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how easy it is to run a laser just by installing an image and sizing it and then telling it how fast you want to go and how long you want to how fast you want the speed to go and the distance from the material. That's how you change the power on a laser.
Mm-hmm.
It's just by telling it how fast you want the laser to move and how close it is to the material. That's it, guys.
Yeah.
For those of you who are listening who want to step into laser, there's nothing else, as far as how we're talking about depth of cut.
Yeah.
So how do you learn those two things? You learn it by learning really basic software that you can upload images into or DXFs, SVGs, which are file types, and then telling it how fast to go and how far away from the material to be to create a desired result.
And if you screw up, I mean, people don't learn when they don't screw up. You do something the first time, what did you learn? Nothing. You learned that, and then you screw up again, or you screw up after you've done that, and then you're like, oh, well, maybe I should have done this way, maybe I should have done it this way, or just, tips and tricks and that type of thing. You learn way more, and you can pass that on to people as well.
Well, we tend to remember our mistakes more than our successes.
Mm-hmm.
If successes are small successes, like if something's working like you feel like it's supposed to, you're glad, but you don't remember it until it does something it's not supposed to, and then you remember like, oh crap, this thing did, thing screwed up, or I screwed up or something, and that's just part of it. So you're right, you tend to remember those things better than you do. Like when I break CNC bits, to this day I still do it. I've been running CNCs for a long time. I've run many, many different types of platforms and systems, and I've used lots of different ways of writing G code. And every once in a while, I'll be programming and I'll type in some numbers and either forget to put a decimal place in where it's supposed to be, or just not paying attention and forget to change my depth of cut. And change a bit, forget to change the depth of cut, and there's a whole different ball game of things that happen than what you expected to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you look at my CNC, you'll almost never see a really nice spoil board. There'll always be a really weird looking hole in it somewhere.
That's why
it happens all the time with me. So
I think
just part of the process.
I think like you said earlier too, when you look at something, so I'm just thinking back to that 3D printer workshop we were at. I didn't really care about the process of putting it together. I wanted to get it done so I could print some cool, unique shape thing. So I was already going from starting at ground zero with no knowledge of anything, of how it even works, to I want to go and print off a 3D skull, which is not the proper way to go about it, where you're saying, chunk things together. So say, for example, like a CNC, you start with maybe doing some V-carve logos and stuff, and maybe go into some, squares and circles, cutouts. Once you learn that and learning the program and chunking it, then you can start getting into maybe a bit more complicated, complex file types. But if you're trying to go from opening up V-carve or Aspire and wanting to design this crazy project and not knowing the basics, you're going to sit there and spin and get frustrated and probably not get too far and not learn anything, right? Because you're just trying to go from that big picture idea. So I think that's where it's very vital, is to break it down into smaller pieces, know what they are so that you can build upon that and you don't get down that confusion swirl and just give up.
You have a really expensive clothesline.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you got to understand, there's no chance that you're going to do advanced geometry if you don't know how to count to 100.
Mm-hmm.
So learn to count to 100 first.
Yeah.
And then worry about advanced geometry after that.
Yeah.
So
simple, really. Like, you just got to chunk it down, but it's so easy into your mind where you see something on social media, some cool tool, you get it, and you just want to go to the, like, from 0 to 100, you want to pick that project that's 100, it's the most complex, and it never happens.
Yeah, but to be totally fair, you pick the right kind of tool genre for that. I mean, 3D printing, right?
Yeah.
You can buy an Anycube or a Bamboo right now, put it on your bench, press a little calibration sequence, and then go to Thingiverse and find something that you want to 3D print. Put it on a USB card, or even hook your machine up to the dang printer, your computer up to the printer, plug it in and press go, and you don't have to learn. You have to
Yeah.
learn how to configure. You have to learn how to push 2 or 3 buttons to configure the tool,
Mhm.
and then you have to learn how to download a file and upload it into, you know, a 3D splicer. And there's lots of them that are very, very user friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And you watch one video, one 10-minute video, and you're printing, not necessarily 3D modeling and not maybe getting the most out of your printer, but you're printing. And that's a step in the right direction. And there'll come a time when you're like, I'd really like to make my own models. And that's how you capture people right there. It's like, hey, I can show you how to do that. And it's not that hard,
Yeah.
So that's you picked the right one. I think 3D printers and lasers, the desktop style lasers with their own apps and stuff, are probably the most friendly for introduction into that type of technology. Provided you understand that lasers can be harmful to your eyes, you need to wear protection, things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's pretty exciting. Where you get into CNC technology, there's a little bit more bandwidth of information that's needed to be used. From feeds and speeds and hold down configurations so your material doesn't go flying off your machine, things like that. But again, they're just small bits of information that are broken down. And once you have the whole of them, it becomes almost second nature after a very short period of time.
Mhm.
Love that. What's the coolest project you've ever been a part of?
I got to work with SpaceX a little bit.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
through a contractor. I worked for a contractor who was working for SpaceX. I got to help develop some techniques and stuff for them. I can tell you it didn't go into space. It was ground-based stuff. I can't tell you a whole lot about that project, but that was fun. Um, and then let's see, besides that, that wasn't really like a crazy, crazy exciting project. I mean, it was just cool to say that I was doing something for SpaceX, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I've gotten so lucky to work on a lot of really cool things. I think the one I like the most is the one I'm working on right now. And we're talking with the investors right now about potentially being able to do some video content around what we're doing, is provided the IP's in place, the intellectual property protection
Mm-hmm.
is in place before we start talking about it. So we may get to share some of that, which will be fun. Um, yeah, it's always hard. I'm always really into whatever I happen to be working on at the moment. So the last project we did with I don't know if you guys got a chance to catch my latest video. We did a push stick, for the
Mhm.
table saw. It's just a couple different concepts based around that idea and
Yeah.
how to make them more interesting, more functional, a little bit safer, potentially a little bit safer.
Yeah.
So we did that. That's fun.
Do you find joy in
Yeah.
the day-to-day projects where you're in the shop trying to perform a cut on a table saw or bandsaw and it's just not working? And then, so for example, your outfeed jigs that you make for the table saw, and even your folding tables to put, everything's about, it seems like it's about efficiency, user efficiency, I guess,
That's
too.
kind of the world. I mean, I guess for people looking in, it can get kind of a humdrum because I live in the world of efficiency.
Mhm.
I live in the world of the Toyota 4S. I live in the world that particular world, and efficiency in the business world means time saved and money saved and safety and a lot of things. And it might feel funny for some people to hear safety come out of my mouth because a lot of what I do looks crazy, like turning bowling balls on table saws. Like, who does that, right?
Yeah.
But that is very well thought out, very well planned, and I understand exactly what's going on and mechanically and physically with it. So it's less dangerous necessarily. I'm not saying it's not dangerous for others, but it's not as dangerous as it looks because I am very careful about how I do that. I don't want to get hurt.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a fun world.
Just seems really interesting. What you do day in, day out. Some people, like you said, they might not find these videos or product very exciting, but I think when you look down at if you can get away from, okay, if it's just a simple aid or jig, but look at the geometry, the physics, the mechanical part, the aptitude it takes to design these,
Just the thought
to
that went
help
into
you
it,
out.
yeah.
I mean, anybody can use like one of your folding tables, so to flip it up onto the table saw. Nonstop, I'm taking a full sheet by myself, lots of times I'm with kids, but lots of times I'm doing it on my own. But even in the cabinet shop, you're manhandling these, big pieces of plywood material, and you're probably not doing your body very good justice with this. And all of a sudden you've created something that you could put on wheels, move it over to the lift, throw it on, and you're just on top of the efficiency. It's just, I find it intriguing, the design part, how you go about, you have a problem and you design a solution. I just think it's so cool that you get to do this day in and day out. And it's just awesome.
Yeah, that's one of that large infeed for plywood on the table saw. That's one of the best projects I've done this year. And I know it seems simple and it's not overtly flashy or anything. It's just a simple thing, but I wish I would have done that 20 years ago, because like yourself, I spent many years, throwing full sheets of, 3/4 inch and even up to 1 inch plywood and MDF on a table saw by myself, cutting it. And that would have saved my back so much, hardship. It's one of those things that I when it's necessary, I design it, and it wasn't necessary before for me, so, and we all kind of design for ourselves in lots of ways, we're solving our own problems. So I wish I would have done that years ago. That just made a whole lot of sense. And now there's not a full sheet of plywood that touches that table without those lifts, without that, those extensions being on the table saw.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Think smart, or work smarter, not harder, right?
There you go.
Right. Yeah. That's the one.
So as we work with Grind Coffee Co., and one of the questions we like to ask our guests is, we call it grind time, and what was one event, or like in your career, one thing that happened that you had the choice that you could, throw in the towel or grind through it, and what part of you, like, what got you through that?
My dad was a Marine Corps drill sergeant, and my mom was a ARM in a maximum security prison. She ran 3 cell blocks.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't quit. Wasn't something that we talked about in our house.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It was either, do or die kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and my dad had a really good saying, and it's nothing, prophetic or anything. It's just, when the times are, when you have, this is one of the reasons the horn hat is kind of my thing. He said, when times are tough, do what a steer does, just drop your head down and bull through it, so
I love that.
That's kind of what, we do. I mean, I have to be careful about giving that advice, because sometimes there are times when you should stop, folks. When it, there are equations that the answer is stop, and that took me a few times to learn that, so I can remember there's a few times I didn't, when I should have said no and stopped and said, this is not right. And just went through it. And after stepping back and looking at it, a year or two later, going, yeah, that was dumb. I should have just moved my energy and efforts on to the next thing, not ground that out. But let's see, sometime that it actually happened. It was actually YouTube. About 6 years ago, I was pretty much done with YouTube. I was ready to, I took 3 months off, maybe 5 years ago. 2017, 2018, we had lost a few members of the family. There was a lot going on personally. I had an opportunity to get a very, very good paying job that was kind of like right up my alley and fun and easy. And I think that year a squirrel fart would have gotten me up, would have convinced me that I was done with YouTube. But there was a part of me also that was like, I enjoyed that. I hate video and editing. I hate it. And nobody wants to hear you say that out loud, because that's what I do. Right. But I love the educational aspect. I love the community side of what we do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good people in this community, and for lack of a better term, the community is almost like a secular church in a way. It's that kind of camaraderie between, woodworkers and content creators and other makers. And I really enjoy that aspect of it. And I love the educational aspect of it. And I love sharing ideas. If I do something that inspires somebody else to think through a problem or maybe think outside the box a little bit and they do it, that's pretty exciting to me.
Mhm.
So I think at that point that for me was like getting back into, and you can go look, you'll see like a big gap in content, like big gap on Instagram, big gap on YouTube. TikTok wasn't a thing yet. I almost didn't come back, but I think at the end of the day, after a couple of months of thinking about it, I was like, you know what, this is valuable. It's worth it. I'm going to stick with it. And at that point, it was a great thing because that job that I got offered would have lasted about 2.5 years and it would have been gone.
Mm.
Not that I wouldn't have been able to fill those with something else. But and since then, I met my wife. I made a lot of really valuable friends, a lot of valuable networking opportunities that are, both friendship and business that it would have never happened if I had done that. And I'm so glad I didn't. So yeah, I'm glad I ground that one through. That wasn't really a grind. That was more of an emotional grind than it was a physical grind. But
I feel like
same.
a lot of them are. I think more than
Yeah.
they're more emotional and intellectual grinds than it's a head game a lot of the times, right?
Yeah. It's a unique thing. Like I know people that do meetings and work in an office all day long, and I mean, a lot of people are really good at it and enjoy that work, and I'm not picking on them. What I'm saying is I think they have a superpower that I don't have.
Yeah.
Because if I have to spend a day doing meetings and and I do that from time to time, a lot more lately, it seems like, but at the end of the day, I am so much more exhausted than a day in the shop. And I have a bad back. So working in the shop is painful. Like a really bad back. So, pushing a board through a table saw or standing up for 5 or 10 minutes to do a video recording sequence. Those things are very painful for me. But all that said, and that's not to gain sympathy, I'm just trying to say that's physically difficult for me to do. But a day of meetings is way more exhausting than a day in the shop. I mean, when I sit on the couch at the end of the day, I'm like, after meetings, I'm like, just, vodka.
Yeah, this is what we're yeah.
Oh yeah, I had enough. And I could come in from a day in the shop and I'm covered in dirt and I have a couple scratches and I'm sore as hell and I'm ready. I'm like, let's play some cards. Let's do something.
Yeah, you're fulfilled, right? You're fulfilled.
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah,
enjoying what
so-
you're doing and you
Yeah.
have that passion. I feel like
Yep.
I probably can talk for both of us, but even being off now, this is our what are we, week and a half off on holidays, and I'm already itching. I've kind of got that. I want to get back on the tools, and I'm always kind of that go,
Yeah.
which is nice to relax. I think we all need our time to be able to rest, relax, spend time with family, reset in a way. But I'm just gnawing to get back on the materials because it's a different time, whether you're at home with your kids all day or your meetings, phone calls, all that. It's just that emotional exhaustion. I find takes way bigger of a toll on me than the physical side. I'm more rejuvenated when I get home after being in the shop than doing different things that aren't that way. So I can totally I feel your pain on the all day meetings.
Yeah, it's a thing, I mean, and I have friends that are the opposite, they can do a day of meetings and creative thinking, and especially some marketing folks that I know, and they come out of that, they're ready to go. And I'm just like, how?
Yeah.
I need to go to the shop for 10 minutes, then I'll be back.
You have powers that I don't have. So,
That's a cool way of
Yeah.
looking at it too, though. You have powers that I don't have. I like that.
Yeah, it's anyway, so yeah, I'm glad I'm still here on social media and doing the YouTube thing. It's been a great ride, and I just hit 50 this year. I just got married, and lots of fun stuff
Congratulations.
planned. So, when people ask like, how long are you going to YouTube? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
For a while, we'll
Yeah.
keep making videos. I know that I'm less than I was, years ago. I'm not, if I get a video out every week, I don't care.
Yeah.
If I put 1 or 2 out a month, I got 2 videos out this month. If I relied on it for income and all that stuff, that would be a different story, but we don't. So, it's part of it, but it's At this point, it's more, I'm doing this because I want to do it, not because I have to do it. And that was the other part that I had back then, is like, I kind of have to do this now because this is kind of what I focused on for the last 5 years, you know?
Yeah.
So I've repositioned myself where it's not as important for us, you know, financially and as a family that we have that income. So it's still good, but it's like, it's not as important as it used to be.
So as we wrap up here, Izzy, we typically end the show with our 3 questions. What advice do you have for somebody that is interested in getting into the fabrication world or industry?
It depends on what facet of the industry that they're interested in, to be honest. And there's a lot of them, you know, I mean, you have welding and machining, and, you know, machining now has become more and more CNC technology than anything else. So, and there's still old school machining too available. There's the woodworking world. There's all these different places to be. And it also would depend on if they want to do it professionally, if they're just thinking about getting into it as a hobby, you know. But I think the most important thing I would say is understand, you know, when they're learning things, is to stop. Don't let them get out of their own damn way, you know, learn how to break things up, figure out where the stop points are and the finish points are, and how to evaluate what's important to learn in those things. And, you know, then you can do that by finding, you know, peers that are doing the same thing, which is a great source of information, especially in the maker community, because there are so many people out there that are happy to help. They're happy to offer advice. They're happy to point you in the directions of some good video content. You know, there's lots of good schools that have been popping up, and even courses now that have become more and more popular, and those have a lot of valuable content, usually for, you know, depending on, some people think they're priced too high or whatever, but for what they're getting out of them, I don't think they're, you know, I think they're incredible. So, those are all good sources. You know, don't believe everything you see on YouTube either. You know, be careful there, y'all.
Yeah.
Just because, and I love Jimmy DeResta, and I'm not picking on him, but just because Jimmy didn't doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And more poignantly, just because I did it, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's those, but, you know, it really depends on what a person wants. So it's kind of a broad question that you're asking there, but there's, you know, the approach is the same. When it comes to the information, remember, you're not going to learn everything all at once. You know, if you're very specific on what you want to learn, that's pretty easy to research. If you're more broad, you know, figure out where you want to start and where that finish point looks like for you, and then kind of fill in those gaps. So that's important. I think that's the best answer I can offer.
Yeah. Now, what about some technical skill sets, like around your area? So if you want to focus on the woodworking side, fabricator, maker, I mean, kind of what you're doing, what are some technical skill sets that are important to develop while getting
material science is a really important technical aspect if you want to be a fabricator. Even in some woodworking, understanding the material science of wood and plywoods and different styles of woods, you know, understanding what short chain carbohydrate or short chain molecules and long chain molecules are when it comes to performance of, I said molecules. You know, the way cells relate to each other in wood. You know, the cellulose in wood, how they relate to each other, how they adhere, understanding the performance values of those things, depending on what you're doing with it. If you're making a desk, no, you don't have to worry about it, right? Don't worry about it. But if you're making a dog sled, you better start thinking about it, you know. And I know that sounds kind of silly when you don't understand, but if you're trying to make a dog sled out of apple wood or out of birch, it ain't gonna work, y'all. You're gonna need to use ash or, you know, white oak or something along those lines. So understanding the differences in the values in the wood strengths and materials, depending on what their uses are, is a great thing to know, depending on what you're going to build. If you're building 2x4 patio furniture, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
And I'm not, that sounded like I was picking on those guys. I'm not. I think it's cool that people are out there doing that. That's amazing. You know, I got to be careful about how I say things. But if if you're getting more in depth and more into it, then the material science of woodworking is very, very important, especially if you're going to have customers, because then you need to understand moisture values and what, you know, some materials move more than others, and some, you know, types of joinery work really well for movement, some don't. So understanding those things, and there's that stuff there's videos out there, there's books out there, it's all over the web, so it's not like there's no mystery of getting access to that information. In the olden days, let your fingers do the walking meant looking through the yellow pages to see if you could find a professor to teach you.
Yeah.
Now all you got to do is Google the damn thing.
Yeah.
So, and you're probably going to be listening to professor teach you, so.
Okay. And then last but not least, top 3 starting out tools.
Woodworking. Stop saying I'm going to get punked on this one. A drill. I don't care what kind. Bandsaw, circular saw, jigsaw, and a drill press.
Okay.
Done. Just
Right
like
there.
that.
And then
drill press is easily the most underutilized tool in every shop on the planet ever. You can do so many things with a drill press. The drill press is capable of so many things that people just don't use it for. You've got sanding operations, you got drilling operations. You can cut with a drill press. You can actually treat the drill press like a little tiny bit of a milling machine. Don't go crazy with it. Jacob's Chuck doesn't like side loads, guys. Don't do that. But there's the drill press is one of those tools that even in a small shop, when $110 drill press sitting on the shop can be so many things for you. It becomes so many tools that you don't have necessarily. That's why I say a drill press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The Swiss Army knife that no one knew it was.
What's that?
It's the Swiss Army knife that no one had the idea or it had a clue that it was a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, I think we did I do a video? I did do a video about that. I turned the drill press into a type of jigsaw for cutting.
Did you hook it up to a pulley system too and ran something off of it?
Oh, we did a sharpening system for the drill
sharpening
press.
system, yeah.
No, I did a goofy little side video of using an off-axis rotary cuff to create up and down motion and put a jigsaw blade in it so we could cut material with the jigsaw, like a jigsaw on the drill press. The drill press does so much. I mean, you can treat it like a mini lathe. You can treat it like a rotary sander. You can put all kinds of sanding attachments on it, polishing stuff on there. If you've seen those videos where people are polishing knives and they look like they're so glossy you could shave with them.
Yeah.
You can do that on a drill press for like $6 and a rouge stick that costs $2.
Wow.
You don't need the fancy buffing thing. You already got it. It's a drill press.
It's a drill press.
So that's why I say the third tool is always the drill press. So it's a handheld drill for drilling, holes away from the drill press and running screws in and pulling screws out, and then something to cut material with.
There's your next t-shirt. There's your next t-shirt idea. It's a drill press.
It's a drill press.
Hey.
Yeah. So we've used. I've turned drill presses into some crazy stuff.
That's cool.
I built an air one, not on YouTube. I turned a drill press into an air compressor once because I needed one. So,
Wow.
I love it.
Yeah. So,
To be a
awesome.
fly
and
on
it
your
was
wall.
wooden air compressor. The frame of like the compression housing was wood.
What?
It didn't need to be a high flow air compressor. I just needed some air pressure.
That's awesome. Izzy,
Yeah.
I just want to say thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come on the show and tell us your story and share some anecdotes and some wisdom with us and our audience. It means a lot.
Well, thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you're here. And as we're kind of closing up here, where can people find you, and what do you have going on that you'd like to promote?
YouTube is probably the best place. If you go over there and just type in IZZY SWAN, our stuff pops up. Sorry if you hear the dog barking in the background. We're getting an Amazon delivery, I think. Just
Yeah,
threw myself under the bus there again. But yeah,
Even
YouTube is a great place. You can check out our website. I wouldn't, we're in the middle of getting ready to rebuild the website. So right now it's kind of like spotty and hit and miss because we've been pulling that down. Instagram, we're IZZY SWAN _woodworking. You can look us up there if you're into that shorter content. We don't post a whole lot over there, maybe once or twice a week. And I don't think I've posted over there in like 3 weeks right now. So I'm a liar. And we do stories, oftentimes we'll do stories, when we're actually doing stuff, we'll do stories almost every day. But yeah, that's where to find me.
That's cool. And I'll put all those links in the in the show notes of this episode as well. Once again, Izzy, thank you so much for coming on. We got to have you on again. I just want to hear more stories and hear more
I'd love
wisdom.
to tell them anytime, guys.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Right on. And thanks to everyone for listening. Thank you, Hoff.
Thanks, Rosie.
And we'll catch everyone in the next one.